Stafford. I am, as you can see, I work here at Virginia Tech in the College of Engineering. I've basically been doing diversity programs, recruitment and retention programs for students most of my career, probably the last 30 years. So hopefully I'll be able to contribute to this really wonderful activity that Sunil is putting together. I was asked, before the ERC RFP came out, the most recent one for the pre-proposal, they held a workshop up in DC, and they invited me to come up to participate in that workshop to talk specifically about diversity and inclusion. One of the reasons why is that for about 18 months, I actually worked in engineering education and centers as the program manager for broadening participation. So I did a lot of work with the ERCs that were already in existence, and work with ERCs that were being proposed. So I'm using the same presentation. I love to, multiple use of things is always a good thing. But I think it pretty much addresses what we want to talk about today. And that's kind of, what is it? What is it that we're talking about? So the first, and let me do that. There you go. Okay, so the first question I have, and I'm going to ask, one of the things that I've learned is trying to get as much participation as we can in this. So I'm going to ask if you will, in the chat, answer this question. What is diversity to you? What kinds of diversity occur to you? And there is a chat up, oh, there it is. Okay, so now I can open the chat. Thank you. Okay, so I'll give you one. I'll throw the first one out there. Obviously, race, ethnicity tends to come to people's minds first, right? Gender tends to come to people's minds when we talk about what is diversity. Diversity is differences, different groups. So diversity of backgrounds, absolutely. Culture and perspective. Economics is a huge one. Education is huge. Preferences and perspective. Knowledge systems, absolutely. Absolutely. Age, yeah, I'm feeling that one. Yep, the span of lived experiences, that's exactly right. Race, income, lots of different attitudes, thoughts, geographic locations, that is wonderful, that's great. And that's what we're going to have to talk about in this is what exactly are we talking about when we talk about diversity, disability, wonderful. Let me go ahead and go to, I tell you, I got too many screens open. Go there. So here's some things, and we've mentioned a lot of these already, but language, religion, nationality, job level, and that's a big one. Physical abilities, we mentioned that, experiences, age, perspectives. There's all kinds of different aspects to diversity. It is not, sometimes people tend to be very narrow. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure we use as broad a perspective as possible. Obviously, race and ethnicity, disability, and gender are the keys that NSF tends to look at when they're asking for reports from ERCs. That's data that we actually have to report, but that's not all that we need to be concerned about. So moving on. So now, so what's inclusion as opposed to diversity? So diversity is almost numbers, right? It's how many of this do we have versus how many of that do we have? What's inclusion? And I'll give you this, okay? Okay, diversity is, okay, inviting you in and asking you to dance. And we have a lot of very environments that are not very inclusive.
Bev, we can't hear you very well.
Again, the diversity is the numbers. The
Bev,
inclusion is what we...
Bev, you're breaking up.
Let's see. I'm here. I don't know why you can't hear me.
Yeah, it was breaking. I can hear, but it was breaking.
Let me see what I can
maybe
do.
microphone.
Is it better now? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes, I
Okay.
think it's better now.
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Sorry about that, folks. So back to it. So inclusion is going to be the actions that we engage in that make diverse groups feel both welcomed and a part of the organization we're creating. Okay, so again, I want to emphasize that diversity is numbers. It's how many African Americans or Hispanic or women or persons with different abilities, how many of them exist within the ERC community. Inclusion is really what we're focused on. It's how do we make it so those different types of people want to be involved in ERC that we're in. Okay. What's equity? You know, these are all words that are now coming into this DEM. So I want for equity, excuse me, for equality, benefits from the same thing. Now you don't know me, but I'm that short person right there. Okay, I'm 5'2", and I really have a hard time being around tall people who can always see over the bank counters and everything else that I can't reach. Equity, on the other hand, says that we're going to give everybody the support that they need to produce equity. Okay, and that's honestly where affirmative action concepts came from. All right, just a little history there. So then, what's justice? Well, check that out. So justice means we're just going to remove the cause of the inequity. We're going to take away the barrier that we tried to overcome in these previous areas, and we'll just take it away and we're good. The systemic barrier has now been removed and everybody can see the game. So that's a big deal. It's a concept. Now, the thing is, this is what we actually have. Equality is pretty much that. Equity is pretty much that. This is what reality is. We have people who are advantaged. We have people who have privilege for various reasons in various settings. Okay. Again, it's not one of the things that I try to make people understand is that privilege, there is no one single group that is privileged. Okay, depending on where you are and what your environment is, you may experience privilege, even though in other environments you don't. So keep that in mind. All right. So the issue is that diversity and inclusion will fail. Diversity will fail because the equity and the equality are lacking in the efforts that we put together. We put all these different people together in the same activity with the same goals without any regard to their differences. And we don't even provide them the proper tools for addressing individual differences and shortcomings. And then we get really surprised when there are misunderstandings and disagreements and problems among people because it was not facilitated. And then the diversity takes a dive and it just all goes downhill from there. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. And the thing is, it is our differences that divide us. It is not, excuse me, the differences between you and me. The thing that divides us is the fact that we can't recognize and accept and celebrate the differences in others. And that's what inclusion is all about. All right, so what do I have to do? Or what do we have to do? From leadership on down, this is a top-down, bottom-up type of process. The leadership is really important for the ERC and for the diversity in the ERC in terms of how all-encompassing is the commitment of the ERC to diversity and inclusion. Are we limited in where it must take place or how it occurs or when it happens or who's involved? You have to be purposeful about all of these things in terms of the entire organization. Okay. Yeah. And this is not just leaders, this is people involved in any aspect of the ERC. For example, let's take meetings. I had a meeting today with Sloan Foundation, and it was myself and a coworker, and we were talking about programs under my office. It would have been very easy for me to talk throughout the entire meeting about the programs that my office does. But that doesn't make any sense. Why can't I let my colleague who's actually running some of the programs present them and talk about them? So think about who's presenting, who is, and I guess I have that right there, who's giving the presentation, who's on the work teams, how do you form the different work teams? Now I know often research labs are somewhat singular, but with the ERC, one of the things that we're looking at is there's supposed to be a real direct tie between all of these research thrusts, right? And across lab teams. So you need to look at things like that. Leadership set the tone for the ERC and for the culture of inclusion. They have to be able to listen. They have to not allow bad behavior. And I know that sounds so like, yeah, of course not. No, you honest. All of us think about situations where we have watched leadership ignore bad behavior. We want the leadership to be committed and to appreciate everybody. And there are different things that we want the leadership to support, such as things like gender neutral language, accessible spaces, recognizing and supporting and celebrating different religious and cultural holidays, different things like that, supporting diversity education for everyone in the ERC. We have to accept that biases exist, and I think we're all at the point where we know we have our biases. I don't know if you ever heard the term confirmation bias. That tends to also be fairly influential in terms of, you know, it's a type of bias that involves favoring information that confirms what you really believed. Okay, so here are the facts over here. Here's what confirms your belief, and this is the stuff that you actually see, what you really believe. It's pretty selective. And if you think about it I'll give you a research example. Think about a researcher who literally does selective analysis and interpretation of data so that it supports the beliefs or results that they want to see, right? That's not what we want to have happen. We have to be conscious about those types of actions and those types of activities. Last thing, obviously we want to celebrate and embrace the differences. One of the nice things that I've seen about this group that Sunil has brought together is that it is very diverse in a lot of different ways. Diversity of profession, diversity of ethnicity and gender. So I think that he's brought together a really good team, and hopefully this workshop will get us started.